Now they come to Ca where Emmanuel meets thousands of sick. He spoke to them at the top of the mountain and said, "Get out of the visit to the mine, many of which have worked for the benefit of the colonists, because it is motivated by greed and what was wrong in Manuel's eyes. And the pressure to control the money, and the destruction of the land they own. You can easily work in the fields and buy some cattle. The man with the cow is more than one person rich, diamond, only when the last tree is cut and in the final white field you realize he can't afford money." City, the words of Emmanuel, and they were afraid he was planning a revolution, so it came to him that night and arrested, and they imprisoned him and his followers on charges of conspiracy. They know that they have no evidence, they cannot hold Emmanuel win, so let the old man Yahlmbh, and a crowd to attack at night, leave the dead to enjoy the road. Judge and Shariful have now been arrested by Emmanuel, and they have lost their hope that they too can happen. But Emmanuel was not afraid, and told them, "Hey, your faith, and promises that believers obey Vuza, what should you fear?" Around Uno Ali's prison comes 3 weeks later, he flees to Emmanuel and his followers in Mumba, North Cabo. Cabo authorities need days, but Emmanuel did not find Emmanuel safe by No Ali. Eventually they said Emmanuel was wet by the river. "We are also against the law, but we will continue to Lusaka. We can reject a disaster, but many children in Israel must return to their original path." They moved north and arrived in the town of Shalanga. An elderly woman found a woman. 3 men are lying on the pavement. I brought them home to give good food and give them bed to sleep. Emmanuel comes out of bed the next day and talks to the elderly woman. "You have shown great compassion by bringing strangers to your home, but tell me, where is your husband?" The old woman started crying and said, "My husband was sick a few months ago and only died last week." Emmanuel now suffered the woman and said, "Don't cry, your husband won't die." At that time, there was a knock on the door, and the man of an elderly woman after death, healthy, if he was before the disease. Emmanuel was with her and Sharifut to a poor area in southern Lusaka. The people there were in need, and when Emmanuel began to learn, one of them spoke. He told us that we worship your God, but first answer me so that your God has done for us, we are the poor and the sick and abandoned. Emmanuel answered the man. I said, Nawal God leaves you how many times that Nwali of God because of you to find out what you are abandoned? And it will be there when you need it, but you need to have your faith. Keep, you will forget, will be in this life or the next day. If the authorities contact leaders in Lusaka and spread a lie, say there is a good transition from plan rebellion. The army wanted the city, but didn't find Emmanuel because Emmanuel hid people. Not to speak the Emmanuel to all the people and said, you may not be behind my leader because it is contaminated by greed and power, and faith Nwali God lbd.hm soon, when Nwali acoustical God faces the nation come from the earth new in the kingdom of Israel, the faithful have enjoyed, at the same time, there will be no disease or war, and there will be a desire, and he will have all the children of Israel saved in bulk by just God himself. Press and Saka he hears the words of Emmanuel and is ready to fight, but Emmanuel was after the escape and exclaimed, do not beat the injustice of you will not think you have a good reason to cut, but show him love, he did not know what to do for the love of others will be in your midst, the salvation of the world in your hands, you will publish the truth, there is no greater love each can the rest of the union of the lost spirit Manuel God created show. If anyone hits you and you see him the next day on his knees, and help him, teach him the whole thing is that you, the one in my last commandment to you, and the love of God lie and teach my letter repetitive and who does not want to join me in the resurrection of Israel. That night, the authorities found Emmanuel's hiding, and he planned to arrest him for the uprising. But when I got home that Emmanuel hid, it was the light of the light and the great mountain Manuel Moro, faithful Emmanuel, heaven. All the people were scared because they didn't understand exactly what had happened or why it had happened. Lusaka officials feared the arrest of Emmanuel was arrested and their local authorities said they should not talk about Emmanuel Sadiki. People did not understand why the teacher to go, and then press the hatch treatment cheering doll promised our salvation, but now abandoned, those who were expelled from the country, what hope did we? Will the authorities get you to the conspirators, who will kill the situation today? However, Emmanuel appeared at one point of light more than the crowd. On the left was his father John Sadeghi, and on the right was Moses. Emmanuel said, "We must each show the direction of the roads, ask me and I will be there, and I do not let anyone serious about my words, and I go to learn what cannot teach here, Hajj, they must also take your Mizrachi pretend to promote and teach healing, but he must return to this altar and write down all the wonders of God that went with the others." So, in neighboring southern Sweden, followers of God's prophet were present at Nawali. Emmanuel Sadeghi. I, Sherfu, returned to Cyprus with a taxi driver in Lusaka, where I wrote the certificate. Think about what you wrote, because the resurrection from Israel for all believers is by far. If you find it hard to believe it, Emmanuel asks the truth and gives it to you. Show the evidence of everything you meet, so join, even though survivors save promises to finally arrive there, but be careful and that those who hear and reject the term become the gift of eternal life. You knew love those who love him. Peace.